The Jets schedule has been released, and I think it looks pretty favorable for the most part. We're breaking down the Jets' 2024 schedule today on Locked On Jets.
You are Locked On Jets, your daily New York Jets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome. This is the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's Thursday, May 16th, 2024, and I'm your host, John B. from GangGreenNation.com. Thanking you so much for making the show your first listener, first watch every day. Subscribe to the show for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, so you'll get new episodes as soon as they're posted. If you enjoy the show and are listening on a podcast source, give the show a 5-star review. If you're watching on YouTube and enjoy the show, give this episode a big thumbs up. It helps us out, helps other Jets fans find the podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Well, today we're breaking down the 2024 Jets schedule. The entire schedule was officially released last night at 8 p.m., but we actually knew the games in advance because there was a Jets content creator, Matt O'Leary, who broke the news early on what the Jets schedule would look like. So big credit to Matt O'Leary, who was the first person to uncover the 2024 Jets schedule. Now, as always, this schedule release got ridiculous amounts of hype relative to what we can actually break down. I mean, NFL Network had a 3-hour special last night, which I still can't get over with 3 hours to break down the schedule. We could do it in one show here. And the NFL through the week released the dates and times of several key games through the season. I mean, every other sport, like the NBA, they just release their schedule and it's like, oh, these are the interesting games. This is what to watch. The NFL tries to turn it into a week-long event, which is silly. But on the other hand, I mean, this is the third episode this week. We're talking about the schedule in some capacity. So I guess I'm part of the problem. And today we're going to get into the 2024 New York Jets schedule. Now, we already knew earlier in the week that the Jets would begin their season in San Francisco on Monday Night Football, Week 1. We talked a lot about that on yesterday's show. There are pros and cons to it. Obviously San Francisco is a tough place to go to start your season. On the other hand, you get a win there, suddenly things are looking pretty good for you. And beyond that, Week 1 always has some very bizarre outcomes. So in some ways, it's better to face a good team Week 1 because good teams aren't always clicking immediately at the start of the season. Sometimes you catch them sleeping heading into Week 1. So I don't think it's the worst thing in the world for the Jets to get San Francisco the first week of the season. And beyond that, nobody's expecting you to win. So even if you start 0-1, it's not a huge deal. Now, on yesterday's show, one of the things I talked about was I hope that they don't get a tough opponent Week 2. And as always, it's difficult to say. We don't know exactly who the good teams are going to be and who the bad teams are going to be in the NFL. But, we have a decent sense of – I feel like we have a sense of that some teams probably aren't looking too promising. Other teams, like Kansas City, is always going to be good. Well, Week 2, the Jets drew the Tennessee Titans. Now, it's a road game, so I was hoping the Jets would be at home. I was hoping the Jets would have their home opener because they're on a short week. And, you don't like to travel after a short week. Unfortunately, the Jets do have to travel, but it is to Tennessee, a team that I think to the extent we can predict teams, obviously the biggest indicator is usually the quarterback position. And, like the Titans are going to tell you they're really confident in Will Levis. And look, Will Levis might end up being really good, but we don't know what Tennessee's quarterback situation looks like. And that's kind of the theme of the early part of the season, because after Tennessee, Jets open up a Thursday night game. So the home opener is a Thursday night game on Amazon, Week 3 against the Patriots. Week 4, the Jets host Denver. And then Week 5, the Jets go to London to face the Minnesota Vikings. So Week 2, you face a Tennessee team with a very unclear quarterback situation. Then Week 3, 4, and 5, you might be facing rookies 3 straight weeks. And that's really beneficial for a defense like the Jets have. Now, that's not to say these rookie quarterbacks are going to be bad necessarily. I think, it's unlikely all 3 of these rookie quarterbacks, when we talk about New England, Denver, and Minnesota, and these are 3 teams that, may not start rookies. I mean, New England could go with Jacoby Brissett. I mean, I don't think Denver's going with Zach Wilson over Bo Nix, but Minnesota could start Sam Darnold. So Minnesota could start Sam Darnold. So actually, like the Denver Minnesota games back to back, you could actually be seeing Zach Wilson and Sam Darnold in back to back weeks, or you could be seeing 2 rookie quarterbacks. Either way, I think that bodes well for a Jets defense, which is expected to be excellent. I mean, you look at that defense, there are really not many holes. And rookie quarterbacks, even the guys who are good, they tend to struggle early in the season. Like a lot of these rookies, they figure it out during the course of the season. By like November, December, they're playing at a really high level. but there are very few rookies who are ready to step in and be great the first month of the season. Maybe they have a great game here or there, but most rookie quarterbacks, they have even the guys who are great have at least one really bad game early in the season because they're still kind of figuring out, they're still kind of feeling their way through the league. And I think that's really beneficial for the Jets. So, if you were apprehensive about the Jets beginning in San Francisco, I think the next 4 games should probably put your mind at ease, because at Tennessee versus New England versus Denver versus Minnesota in London. By the way, the Minnesota game in London is kind of a break for the Jets because that was supposed to be a road game. So that essentially takes the Jets down to 8 true road games. It really makes the Minnesota game what, for all intents and purposes, is a neutral site game. And it's exciting because I know we have a lot of Jets fans in the UK. I mean, I've heard from a lot of Locked On Jets listeners from the UK. It's actually the second. The UK is actually the country with the second most listeners to Locked On Jets, behind the United States. So we have a lot of Jets fans in the UK who might be able to go to that game. And I love London. Maybe I'll go to London. I'll think that over. Maybe we'll go to London. Maybe we'll have like a Locked On Jets get together in London. I would absolutely love that. But I think you have to look at this. I mean, even if the Jets lose week 1, that's like 4 really winnable games back to back to back to back. That's very favorable for the Jets. So if you were nervous about the Jets starting the season with the 49ers, I think that if they get past, now if they get a win week 1, I mean, they could be off to the races here with that schedule, with this defense going up against that slate of quarterbacks. I mean, things are looking pretty good. Week 6, things get a little bit tougher. Jets host Buffalo on Monday nights. And unfortunately, I think the 2 games where you're going to see a lot of that clip of Aaron Rodgers getting injured are going to be week 1 against San Francisco, because, it's week 1 again, it's Monday night again. You'll also see a lot of the clips of Aaron Rodgers getting injured week 6 when the Jets play Buffalo on Monday night, because it was a Monday night game against Buffalo last year where Aaron Rodgers got injured. But, I think the schedule makers did the Jets a little bit of a break there, because the week after the London game, the Jets play Monday Night Football, which means they have an extra day to prepare. So that's kind of a benefit for them, because that London trip can be really tough to come back from. And usually you get your bye after it. I believe the NFL, I'm not sure whether they still do this. I believe the NFL used to ask you if you wanted your bye. And, some teams have started turning down the bye. They want the bye later in the season. Jets do not have their bye the week after London. They have a game against Buffalo, which is a tough game, but it's Monday nights. So they have an extra day to rest, recuperate after returning from London, which seems like a positive. Then the Jets go to Pittsburgh. So Jets have a short week, and then they have another road trip heading to Pittsburgh, which is tough. It's a Sunday night game, week 7. Week 8, the Jets travel to New England to play the Patriots, which on paper should be a pretty winnable game. But of course, when you're playing in the division, it's not so easy. There's no easy game in the division, but to the extent there's going to be an easy game in the AFC East this year, it's probably going to be New England. Then week 9, the Jets play once again on Thursday night. Jets play the Houston Texans. It's another home game, so at least both the Thursday night games are at home. It's an 8:15 kickoff on Amazon, 8:15 Eastern. Jets face the Texans, a rematch of a game last December. It shocked everybody because the Jets went out and crushed the Texans and CJ Stroud. So the Texans will have revenge on their mind, but that could be a very good game. So that's your first half of the season. And I think you have to say that the first half lines up pretty well for the Jets. I mean, when you're looking at the games that they're facing, especially that 4-game stretch from week 2 to week 5, I mean, that's where you can get on a roll. And sometimes in the early part of the season, you stack wins and your team builds confidence and you get going. And sometimes, you lose a bunch of games and you never recover. Well, the Jets have a schedule set up for them to win games. If you stack the tough games early and you lose them, it can really finish your season. That's not the way this schedule is set up for the Jets. So I think for the most part, this start is very favorable for the New York Jets. Yeah, San Francisco's tough week 1. Yeah, Buffalo after London's tough, but you do get that extra day. I mean, going to Pittsburgh on a short week's not easy, but there's nothing super, super easy in the NFL. To the extent you can get something favorable, I think this lines up pretty well for the New York Jets. Now, here on the Locked On Jets podcast, we'll turn our attention to the second half of the season. I think what we can say is that the Jets have a good chance of controlling their own destiny as we get to the home stretch in 2024, and I'll explain why continuing here on this Thursday edition of Locked On Jets. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by Gametime. You might want to go to one of these Jets games this year, and with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying NFL tickets. I mean, do you want to go to San Francisco week 1, see the Jets and Aaron Rodgers in his return game face the NFC champions? Do you want to be there for the home opener, week 3 against New England. Maybe you want to go to London. Maybe we will go to London week 5 against the Minnesota Vikings. No matter what game you want to go to, Game Time has you covered. They have amazing last-minute deals. You can save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports like football, but also concerts, comedy, theater. You can go see the Knicks. You can go see the Rangers during their playoff runs. It's all at Game Time, and I've used it myself. It's super easy. You just pull out your phone or mobile device, a couple taps, and you have an amazing deal on last-minute seats. You won't believe the prices you get on Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account at redeem code LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDONNFL, one word with no space, for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Thank you so much for making Locked On Jets your first listener, first watch every day. A big shout out to you everydayers. This is a daily podcast covering the New York Jets. We have new episodes each day through the week, Monday through Friday. We continue now breaking down the Jets' 2024 schedule. Heading into week 10, the Jets have a trip out to Arizona. That's going to be a late afternoon start on CBS. Jets will take on Kyler Murray and the Arizona Cardinals. Believe it or not, that's only going to be the Jets' second trip to Arizona in the last 20 years. And that's a scheduling quirk that I don't know is that necessarily that interesting. The NFL kind of changed the way that the order the Jets played teams in the NFC West, home versus road. So this will only be the second time the Jets visit Arizona since 2005. And the Jets will, again, that's a week 10 game. Then week 11, the Jets play the Colts Sunday Night Football. They host them on Sunday night, which I don't know. Like, all the Jets games you could put in prime time this year, I don't know if the Colts would be the one that I'd stick on Sunday Night Football. If you're looking for candidates for Jets games that might be flexed, I mean, that's one that stands out. Now, if the Jets are having a good season, maybe they stay there, and I don't know, maybe the Colts will have a big season behind Anthony Richardson. But I looked at that, I was like, really, that's the Sunday night game? I don't know. I guess for now it is. Then week 12, the Jets have their bye week, and if you're a long-time listener, I always appreciate a late bye, and it varies. Sometimes you have a lot of injuries in the early part of the season, and an early bye is timely. But I think generally speaking, just because of the grind of the season, how physical the game is. I mean, the NFL, everybody's playing hurt by the end of the season. I think the later the bye comes on your schedule, the better it is for you. And the Jets bye week will be what's the week of November 25th. So the Sunday, November 25th. So I think that's a positive. I think when you get the late November bye, it kind of allows your team to freshen up for the stretch run, especially a team that's going to be older like the Jets. They're going to accumulate a lot of bumps and bruises through the season. Just because I think more than anything, what guys who've played in the league say is when you get older, it becomes tougher to recover. It's not. Part of it's like older players are more injury prone, but even guys who don't get injured, they talk about how much more difficult it is to recover from week to week. So having that late bye, having a week to get healthy, to get fresh for the stretch run in the latter part of November, I think could be a positive thing for this team. Week 13, the Jets host the Seattle Seahawks. That's a 1:00 game. Geno Smith's potential return to New York. So I guess that'll probably be the storyline that week, as long as Geno is still the starting quarterback in Seattle. The next week, the Jets travel to Miami, week 14. So the Jets don't play the Dolphins until week 14, and they will actually get them 2 of the final 5 weeks of the season. And yesterday I mentioned this. The trip to Miami, it's coming in December. What did I say yesterday? I said, please don't have the trip to Miami come into September, because in September, it's still the summer. It's still the heat of summer in Miami. It's the early part of the year. Players aren't really in game shape yet. You always see guys dehydrated by the end of those games in Miami, especially the road players who aren't used to the temperature, the extreme heat. See guys cramping up because they're not really in game shape because they haven't really prepared in preseason. December, January, Miami is a beautiful place to visit. You get out of the cold. It's usually pretty mild. So I'm very happy to get the Miami Dolphins week 14. I mean, that's another one. That's another one you might want to go to. Then the Jets stay in Florida week 15. They go to Jacksonville week 15 to take on Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars. Florida's a close enough trip that they're not going to stay in Florida, but back-to-back Sundays in Florida in December, not bad. Jacksonville's not as warm. Jacksonville, the weather's not as mild as it is in Miami, but hey, it's probably going to be better weather in Jacksonville than it will be in New York. Then right before Christmas, week 16, December 22nd, the Jets host the Los Angeles Rams for a 1:00 game, or at least at 1:00 right now, if the game's not flexed. Week 17, week 18, the Jets play back-to-back games to close out the season against their division rivals. Week 17, they travel to Buffalo. Week 18, they host the Miami Dolphins. So Jets end back-to-back weeks with AFC East rivals, and let's be honest. I mean, New England's probably not going to be that good. I know we always say you never know, and it's true, you never know. I mean, New England could surprise us all, but from where things stand right now, I think we can probably surmise New England's the fourth best team in the division. They were last year. Their personnel on offense is just not very good. I mean, I think that they're putting this rookie quarterback they've got in an impossible situation. But I think that the Jets, heading into these final two games, there's a lot of apprehension because you're facing the two toughest teams in your division back to back to close out the season. I view it differently. I think it's great to finish with division rivals back to back because it makes it more likely you'll be in control of your own destiny the last couple of weeks of the season. It's always tough when you're entering the last couple of weeks of the season and you need somebody to help you out. And maybe that's for seeding, maybe it's for winning the division, maybe it's for a wild card spot, maybe it's just to make the playoffs. But it's always tough when you are facing when you don't control your own destiny. It's more likely you control your own destiny when you face your division rivals because you might be a game out in the division. And if you're not playing them, then you need help. But if you're playing your top division rival head to head, then you don't need help. You just go out and take care of your business and you win. And the other good thing for the Jets, another thing we talked about yesterday, the Miami home game, the last week of the season in January. I mean, that's when you want to get the Miami Dolphins. We know that the Dolphins are a warm weather team, and I know this stuff can be overrated. I know, I know sometimes we go a little overboard talking about the warm weather team in a cold climate, but I think we've seen that for the Dolphins, that's a team that doesn't love to play in the cold weather. I think Tua has shown he's not a quarterback who necessarily loves to play in the cold weather. Getting them week 18 at home, where it's good. I mean, you can't get a colder Jets home game during the regular season than week 18. It just feels beneficial for the Jets. So yeah, these are tough games. Look, there's nothing that comes easy in the NFL. There's no schedule that gives you 17 guaranteed wins. There's no schedule where you're the favorite team 17 straight games. There are going to be tough games on your schedule. And yeah, like finishing the season with Buffalo, Miami, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be as easy as, finishing the season with New England might have been. But you know what? If you want to do big things, if you want to win big in this league, you got to win tough games, no matter where they are on the calendar. And I'll go back to what I said. I think there's something to be said for the idea that you face your biggest competition at the end of the year. The division could be right in front of you. It's your opportunity to take it without needing somebody else needing somebody else to perform. You could, if you take care of business, you can win the division. You can get better seeding. You can make the playoffs. So I like a lot about the composition of this schedule for the New York Jets. I like the fact that you start with the big challenge in San Francisco, then the schedule kind of lightens up, and then you have the biggest games of your season right at the end, or at least what could be the biggest games of the season right at the end. And you're on the Locked On Jets podcast. We'll close out the show. I'll give you some other thoughts on the Jets schedule. I think that there are things that are favorable for the Jets. I don't think the schedule makers were really thinking the fans, though, when they came out with the schedule. I'll give you that and some other thoughts continuing here on this Thursday edition of Locked On Jets. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Of course, it is playoff time. The Knicks and Rangers both trying to make runs to their respective Eastern Conference Finals. Maybe the most exciting spring in New York for the NBA and NHL in 30 years since that legendary spring of 94. Can the Knicks and Rangers close the job? Can they finish the deal? We'll find out. But on FanDuel, we know that you get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. Again, it's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. This is the Locked On Jets podcast here on this Thursday. We're talking about the New York Jets schedule. The schedule was officially released last night, but credit to a Jets content creator, Matt O'Leary, who was the first one to get the scoop. Matt O'Leary posted the actual Jets schedule several hours in advance and got almost everything right. So nothing but credit for him. What else can we say about the New York Jets schedule? Well, one thing I'll say is that this is a very, very unfriendly schedule for fans, especially if you're a fan, if you're a season ticket holder who has kids. This is a brutal schedule. Because the Jets play one Sunday afternoon game at home before the month of December begins. Now, there's some games that could get flexed, but as of right now, week 4, Sunday, September 29th against the Broncos, it's a 1 o'clock game. That is the only time the Jets play at home during the afternoon. And part of this is because there are a lot of primetime games. So if you're a Jets fan out of market, I don't know, maybe don't want to pay for Sunday ticket. Well, this is the season for you because of the Jets games before the bye week. So of the first 11 games, 7 of them are going to be on national TV. Now, I mean, I don't know whether you count the London game as a primetime game. It's always a question to me, like, what counts as a primetime game? Because last year, I remember, like, the Black Friday game was considered a primetime game, even though it was an afternoon game when the Jets played the Dolphins the day after Thanksgiving. Somehow that was considered a primetime game, even though it was the afternoon. Does the London game count as a primetime game? I don't know. I don't think so. But week 1, the Jets play Monday Night Football. Week 3, the Jets play Thursday Night Football. Week 5, the Jets play at London, 9:30 in the morning Eastern, NFL Network. Week 6, the Jets play Monday Night Football. Week 7, the Jets play Sunday Night Football. Week 9, the Jets play Thursday Night Football. And Week 11, the Jets play Sunday Night Football. So of the first 11 weeks, you have 7 nationally televised games. So that's, if you're a Jets fan, that's pretty good news if you're out of market. So the Jets are, and look, I think we all know why. It's the Aaron Rodgers effect. Aaron Rodgers draws eyeballs to televisions. And of course, this is all subject to how things actually go during the season. But I think that's, if you're a Jets, if you're a fan out of market, that's great. Selfishly, I hate the primetime games because, I have to record this podcast and I have to write an article after every game. So the primetime games, I usually don't get to bed till 1 a.m. But, that's the sacrifice I have to make for the Jets, being a team people want to see for once. But that's just me selfishly. I don't think any of you have to deal with that. So I just have to be tough and, make it through a bunch of late nights early on in the season. What else can we say? One thing I don't love about this schedule are all the short weeks. And again, that's just a product of being a team people want to see. That's a product of having Aaron Rodgers on your team. It's a product of being a team that gets a lot of primetime games. I mean, week 2, Jets have a short week and a road trip. Week 3, the Jets have another short week. I mean, 3 games in your first 3 games come in the first 10 days of the season. So within 10 days, and this is why the NFL calendar goes so quickly. Within 10 days, almost 20% of the season will be complete. That's a tough stretch. I mean, I'm not a fan. Like, I really like a lot about the early part of the Jets schedule. That might be the only thing I don't love, is the fact that, they give you Monday night week 1 and Thursday night week 3. So you essentially have back-to-back short weeks, the second and third weeks of the season. That doesn't seem entirely fair. Now, of course, fair doesn't matter when we're talking about the schedule, but especially with an older team. And again, going back to what I said earlier, older players, it's tougher for them to recover from week to week. And you give them back-to-back short weeks, that's tough. But these aren't the only short weeks the Jets have. Jets have a short week heading from week 6 to week 7 because they play week 6 Monday Night Football, and then a road trip week 7 after on the short week. Thursday, they have a second Thursday. They have 2 Thursday night games. Now the only benefit to the 2 Thursday night games is that they're both at home. So at least you don't lose that extra day traveling. I mean, the Thursday night games are tough to prepare for. They're tough for the coaching staffs to cook up game plans for, but they're especially tough when you're playing on the road because you essentially lose one last preparation day because the team's traveling that day. So at least the Jets have 2 Thursday night games at home. And I don't love having 2 Thursday night games, all these short weeks. That's awfully tough. But that said, I mean, the flip side to that is the weeks of the week after you play the Thursday night game, you get 3 extra days to prepare for your next game. So you get a long week after that. So of course there is kind of like the give and take of it all. So I think that, it's an interesting schedule for the Jets. One thing I definitely say is that if the Jets are going to go on a run this year, this is a good schedule to have. Now, we don't know how good a lot of the teams are going to be. And I think the worst way that you can view whether a schedule is easy or difficult is looking at last year's records. This is what people always do. You always see like these articles coming out about who had the easiest schedule this year or who has the toughest schedule this coming season. It's always based on how the opponents did the previous year. It's always based on the opponent's winning percentage the year before. So much changes from year to year in the NFL that makes that irrelevant. But I do think it's worth looking into when we're talking about what the over-unders are on wins for each team on the betting boards. And if you look at FanDuel, if you look at the Jets' opponents' expected wins this season, and look, the over-unders, the odds makers aren't always right about these things, but they have to be right more often than they're wrong or they go out of business. They have to take a rational look at these things. So I think it's better looking at the odds makers than it is the pundits, because like a pundit could be wrong about anything. Some writer or some podcaster like me, we can just throw out anything. It doesn't matter if we're wrong. If the odds makers are wrong long enough, they go out of business. The odds makers are wrong frequently enough, they go out of business. And when you look at the over-unders for the Jets opponents this year, it is on paper one of the easiest schedules in the NFL. So if you look at like what's happened this offseason, if you look at the moves the Jets have made, if you look at some of the players division rivals have lost, I mean, things are set up for the Jets. And this schedule looks really favorable. And if you look at the order of these games, I think it's a pretty good order of games for this team to get rolling. I mean, I just don't, if the Jets don't win this year, when are they going to win? Everything is set up for this team. And I think that this schedule has done them a number of favors. I don't love all the short weeks. I certainly don't love for the fans that there are no afternoon home games, especially for fans with children. Because I mean, I know it's tough to take your kids to the primetime games, but that doesn't really impact the way the team plays on the field. It feels like everything is set up for the Jets to have a big year this year. And we'll be talking plenty about that between now and the start of the season. But for today, that's all. This has been the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day is our motto. As always, if you enjoy the show, hit the subscribe button where you're watching or listening so that you'll never miss an episode. If you enjoy the show and are listening on a podcast source, give it a 5-star review. And if you're watching on YouTube and enjoy the show, give this episode a big thumbs up. Helps us out, helps other Jets fans find the podcast. We're going to do our mailbag tomorrow, so please send in your mailbag questions. Can't wait to answer them. See you then.